Brothers and sisters, we're not here today to sugarcoat a lie. We're here to tell the truth, the raw, unfiltered, uncomfortable truth. And if that truth makes you squirm in your seat, then maybe it's time you asked yourself why. America, you are on trial. Yes, you. The land that calls itself free while keeping millions in chains. The land that shouts liberty and justice for all while practicing oppression and injustice as tradition. The prosecution rests on centuries of evidence, and the verdict is being written in the streets, not in your whitewashed history books. You want to talk about law and order. Let's talk about the law that said we were 3/5 of a human being. Let's talk about the order that let our ancestors hang from trees while the crowd smiled and posed for pictures. Let's talk about your law and your order, written by the powerful, enforced by the brutal, and ignored when it comes to justice for the black man. America is on trial for its historical and ongoing injustices. This is not a metaphor, not a rhetorical device, but a living, breathing reality that has unfolded over centuries and continues to unfold today. The charges are grave, the evidence overwhelming, and the witnesses stand not only in the pages of history, but in the living experiences of millions of people who continue to be oppressed, silenced, and disregarded. This trial is not being held in some distant courtroom with powdered wigs and polished gavels. It's being held in the streets, in the neighborhoods, in the schools, in the prisons, and in the hearts and minds of those who refuse to forget what has been done. From the very beginning, the foundation of this country was laid with the blood, bones, and labor of stolen people. Before there was a constitution, before there was a declaration of independence, there was chattel slavery. Human beings were captured, chained, branded, sold, raped, and worked to death to build an economy that still profits from their suffering. The wealth of this nation, the so-called American dream, was financed by a nightmare imposed on millions of Africans who never had a vote, a right, or a voice. The trial begins there, but it does not end there. When the shackles came off, the systems of control only changed form. The chains were replaced by laws. The plantations were replaced by prisons. The auction blocks gave way to redlining, Jim Crow, voter suppression, economic exclusion, and police occupation of black communities. And every time black people rose up to claim their dignity, the system responded not with justice, but with violence. Every time the oppressed cried out, the state answered with silence or a baton. You cannot speak of justice in America without acknowledging the double standard that defines its legal, political, and social institutions. When a white man breaks the law, he's given the benefit of the doubt. When a black man walks down the street, he's given a death sentence in the form of a bullet, a knee, a chokehold, or a cell. The scales of justice are not just tipped, they are rigged. And those who hold the power want to pretend as though they don't see it, as though history is separate from the present, as though all that suffering somehow resolved itself when a law was passed or a holiday declared. But we know better. We know that these injustices are not accidents. They are not unfortunate side effects. They are part of a design, a structure built to keep power in the hands of the few while the many are left to fight for scraps. That design is upheld every time a police officer walks free after killing an unarmed black person. It is upheld every time a school in a black neighborhood crumbles while funding pours into private institutions. It is upheld every time a judge hands out 2 different sentences for the same crime based on the color of the defendant's skin. It is upheld every time the media shows compassion for white mass shooters and suspicion for black victims of state violence. The trial of America is not about isolated incidents. It is about a pattern. It is about a system that punishes poverty while protecting wealth, that devalues black life while pretending to celebrate it, that offers symbolic gestures in place of real structural change. It is about a nation that exports democracy with bombs while suppressing the voices of its own citizens at home. It is about a government that can find trillions for war, but cannot find clean water for Flint, cannot find shelter for the homeless, cannot find justice for the murdered, cannot find humanity in its own policies. To say America is on trial is to say that accountability is long overdue. It is to say that justice delayed is justice denied. It is to say that the illusion of progress cannot stand in for the reality of liberation. It is to say that reform is not enough when the root is rotten. You cannot put a new coat of paint on a building with a cracked foundation and expect it to stand. The foundation must be inspected, interrogated, and if found unjust, torn down and rebuilt with equity at its core. This trial is also about memory. America has selective amnesia. It remembers the Constitution but forgets the slave codes. It remembers the Boston Tea Party but forgets the Tulsa Massacre. It remembers Martin Luther King's dream but forgets the bullet that took his life. It forgets that he was hated, jailed, and spied on by the very system that now quotes him. This nation memorializes its victories and buries its crimes. But history has a way of resurfacing. The truth has a way of echoing, and the voices that have been ignored are becoming impossible to silence. The testimony continues to pour in. It comes from grieving mothers who bury their children and never receive an answer. It comes from workers denied a living wage. It comes from students forced to learn lies about their own past. It comes from those who see that the flag represents freedom for some and a funeral for others. These are not stories from centuries ago. They are happening now in real time under the same flag within the same borders. And if America cannot hear these voices, then it is not hard of hearing, it is willfully deaf. If it cannot see this truth, then it is not blind, it is refusing to open its eyes. A nation that calls itself great must first have the courage to confront its own reflection, to face the damage it has done to those within and beyond its borders, because the truth is not just inconvenient, it is indicting. And if justice is real, then this trial is not a performance, it is a reckoning. Patience has expired. Justice must be demanded, not requested. There is a difference between asking and demanding. One comes from a place of hope, the other from a place of necessity. For too long, the oppressed have been taught to ask nicely, to wait, to be calm, to have faith in systems that were never designed for them, to knock politely on the door of justice, only to have it shut in their face again and again. But there comes a time when waiting becomes a weapon used by the oppressor, a time when delay is denial. That time has passed. The patience we were told to practice has turned into a prison, and the truth is we never owed it in the first place. They told us that progress takes time, that change is slow, that we must be reasonable, that we must be civil, that we must trust the process. But while they spoke of patience, our children were dying. Our communities were being targeted. Our livelihoods were being stolen. And the same voices that told us to wait were the ones writing the laws, controlling the courts, arming the police, and shaping the narratives. They sat comfortably in positions of power while preaching to the powerless about patience. What they really meant was obedience. What they really wanted was silence. What they really demanded was submission dressed up as respect. But when your humanity is on the line, when your right to exist is under constant assault, you do not ask for justice. You rise up and demand it. You do not negotiate with systems that profit from your suffering. You confront them. You expose them. You hold them accountable. Justice is not a favor. It is not a gift handed down from above. It is not something you wait for like a package in the mail. Justice is a right, a human right, a birthright. And when it is denied, it must be taken. Those in power would rather we wait, because every day we wait is another day they enjoy their position unchallenged. Every year we wait is another generation that grows up thinking this is normal, that poverty is natural, that police violence is inevitable, that inequality is just the way things are. They say change takes time. But time has already taken enough. Time has taken fathers from their families through mass incarceration. Time has taken mothers through medical neglect. Time has taken dreams through redlining and job discrimination. Time has taken lives through bullets and beatings and broken promises. And now they want us to give more time, to wait for a system that has never worked for us to magically fix itself. You do not wait for a broken system to repair itself. You do not wait for your oppressor to grow a conscience. You force the issue. You bring the demand directly to the doorstep of power. You organize. You protest. You speak so loudly and move so strategically that the halls of power have no choice but to listen, or be torn down and replaced. You do not whisper for justice. You shout. You do not politely request your humanity. You insist on it unapologetically, relentlessly, and without compromise. Every inch of progress that has ever been made came from people who stopped waiting. It came from people who were told to be quiet and refused. It came from people who risked their jobs, their freedom, their lives, because they understood that waiting meant dying. The civil rights movement wasn't built on patience, it was built on pressure. The abolition of slavery didn't come because someone waited. It came because people rose up. Women didn't win the right to vote because they were patient. They won it because they demanded it. No oppressor has ever given up power willingly. Power yields nothing without a demand. It never has. It never will. When you ask for justice, you leave room to be ignored. When you demand it, you force a response. And that response reveals the true nature of those in power. They will call it aggression. They will label it extremism. They will say it is divisive. But what they are really saying is that it makes them uncomfortable, that it threatens their grip on control, that it exposes the lie they've been selling for centuries, that if we're just patient enough, things will get better. But how much longer do we wait? How many more names must be written on tombstones? How many more hashtags must we mourn? How many more times must we explain that our lives matter? How many more centuries does justice require to arrive? They cannot answer, because they know that the answer exposes their hypocrisy. If justice were truly a priority, it would already be here. If equality were truly a value, it wouldn't need to be debated. There is no more room for patience in the face of injustice. There is no moral high ground in waiting while others are suffering. There is no virtue in silence when lives are being stolen in plain sight. Those who preach patience in the face of oppression are not allies, they are enablers. They may not wear the uniform of the oppressor, but they speak his language. To demand justice is to reclaim power. It is to say that our lives are not negotiable. It is to say that the time for waiting has come to an end. That justice delayed is no longer acceptable. That we will not be satisfied with crumbs when we are owed the whole table. It is not radical to want to live in dignity. It is not extreme to expect accountability. What is radical, what is extreme, is a society that tells people to wait for justice while they are being buried without it. The system is built on oppression and must be radically changed. This is not a claim made in anger. It is a fact rooted in the lived experience of generations. You cannot reform what was never meant to serve all people. You cannot fix a house that was built on stolen land, with stolen labor designed only to shelter those deemed worthy by the ones who wrote the blueprint. The system was never broken. It was built exactly this way, with intention, with calculation, with cruelty masked as order. From its very conception, the American system, economic, legal, educational, political, was created to benefit the few at the expense of the many. And every attempt to patch it up without addressing its rotten foundation only prolongs the suffering. Oppression is not incidental. It is not accidental. It is structural. It is the very architecture of this nation's institutions. The same hands that wrote the laws also wrote the exclusions, carved them into policies, and buried them beneath slogans of liberty and equality. But liberty for who? Equality for who? For the enslavers, not the enslaved. For the landlords, not the landless. For the bosses, not the laborers. From the Constitution to the courtrooms, the rules were never written to serve all. They were written to control, to divide, to maintain a hierarchy that privileges wealth, whiteness, and power. This system teaches oppression as tradition. It is passed down like an heirloom. It is taught in classrooms that erase the truth and celebrate conquest. It is enforced by police trained to see certain bodies as threats and others as citizens. It is embedded in a media landscape that paints resistance as chaos and injustice as order. It is in the zoning laws that segregate, the voting laws that disenfranchise, the healthcare systems that neglect, the education systems that underfund. These are not isolated flaws, they are the mechanics of control. Every time someone tries to speak this truth, the system responds defensively. It demands calm. It demands civility. It demands that we focus on progress instead of pain. But what they call progress is often just a new disguise for the same old oppression. A new law, a new face, a new speech, while the conditions remain unchanged for those at the bottom. You cannot mask systemic violence with symbolic victories. You cannot point to a handful of success stories as proof that the system works when millions remain trapped beneath it. Radical change is not about destruction for the sake of chaos. It is about unmaking what has caused generations of harm and building something rooted in equity, in humanity, in truth. It is about acknowledging that minor adjustments will not stop a machine built to exploit. You do not put a new tire on a vehicle that was designed to run people over. You change the vehicle. You build something entirely different, with a different purpose, a different direction, and a different destination. Oppression survives because the system has made it appear normal. It has made poverty look like personal failure, violence look like protection, and injustice look like legality. People are trained to accept their conditions, to believe that the police protect them even when the evidence says otherwise, to believe that the courts are fair even when they punish the poor and reward the powerful, to believe that anyone can succeed if they just work hard enough even when entire communities are structurally blocked from opportunity. This is how the system defends itself, not just with weapons, but with lies, with narratives, with myths that keep people from seeing the truth. But the truth has never disappeared. It lives in every community that has been targeted. It lives in the stories of resistance that never made the history books. It lives in the cries of mothers mourning their children, in the rage of those pushed to the edge, in the silence of those who have given up hope. The truth is there, waiting to be acknowledged. And once it is, there is no going back. Once the veil is lifted, the system can no longer pretend to be neutral. Once people understand the structure, they begin to question the entire arrangement. Radical change means rethinking what we've been taught to accept. It means redistributing power, not just adjusting policies. It means understanding that true justice cannot exist within a framework designed to exclude. It means centering the voices of the oppressed, not silencing them in the name of order. It means building systems where the value of a person is not determined by their zip code, their skin color, or their bank account. It means investing in communities instead of cages, in healing instead of punishment, in liberation instead of surveillance. Those who benefit from the current arrangement will always say that change is dangerous. They will say it's too fast, too loud, too demanding. But what they really fear is accountability. They fear losing the privileges they have mistaken for rights. They fear the end of domination disguised as democracy. They fear that the people they once controlled are now speaking with clarity and organizing with purpose. And they should fear it because a system built on oppression cannot withstand the truth forever. To radically change the system is not to abandon order. It is to create a new order one that is rooted in justice rather than control, one that sees people as full human beings, not problems to be managed, one that redistributes not just resources but voice, agency, dignity. This change will not come from the top down. It will come from the ground up, from the ones who have nothing left to lose and everything to gain. It will come from those who are tired of reforming their own suffering, tired of begging for crumbs, tired of seeing the same cycles repeat with new faces and the same results. The old system cannot be repaired. It must be replaced. Truth must be spoken boldly, regardless of who it makes uncomfortable. This is not a time for soft words or polite deception. This is not a time to tiptoe around the feelings of the powerful while the powerless bleed in the streets. Truth is not meant to be gentle when injustice is brutal. Truth is not meant to soothe the conscience of the oppressor. Truth is a weapon in the hands of the oppressed, and when it is spoken without apology, it shakes the foundations of falsehood that prop up this society. The truth is that this country was built on genocide, sustained by slavery, and maintained through systemic inequality. That is not an opinion, not a theory, but a historical reality. Yet the moment you say it plainly, the defenders of comfort come forward, demanding a gentler tone, a more balanced perspective, a more civil conversation. They do not want truth. They want silence wrapped in the language of dialogue. They want calm while we are enraged, order while we are mourning, unity while we are dying. But truth does not bend to feelings. Truth is not here to please. It is here to confront. It is here to reveal what has been buried. It is here to disrupt the lies that have been painted as patriotism, as tradition, as law. Speaking the truth means calling things by their names. Not excessive force, murder, not biased racism, not income gap, economic theft, not foreign policy, imperialism. The truth does not dress itself up in euphemisms to make those in power feel comfortable. It comes as it is, raw, unfiltered, undeniable. And yet, there is always pressure to dilute the message, to soften the critique, to consider the perspectives of those who benefit from the very systems we are fighting against. But what justice has ever been won by those who whispered? What liberation has ever been achieved by those who negotiated their truth to make it easier to swallow? Every freedom we have came from people who told the truth when it was dangerous, when it was unwelcome, when it cost them everything. This society punishes truth tellers. It locks them up, discredits them, calls them radicals, troublemakers, agitators. It tries to erase them from the story and elevate the quiet collaborators, the so-called peacemakers who never once disrupted the status quo. But history remembers the bold. History remembers the ones who stood on the front lines and spoke the truth while others stayed silent. Because silence is not neutral. It sides with the oppressor. Comfort is not harmless. It allows injustice to go unchallenged. Those who ask for calm in times of crisis are not asking for peace. They are asking for the continuation of control. Truth must be spoken in the boardrooms, in the classrooms, in the churches, in the streets. It must be spoken to power, not just in protest, but in policy. It must be taught to children so they know the full story of this country, not just the sanitized version that protects fragile egos. It must be printed in books, broadcast on airwaves, painted on walls, shouted from rooftops, because the truth is not dangerous, ignorance is. And this system thrives on ignorance. It depends on people not knowing how it really works. It survives on distorted narratives, on myths of meritocracy, on false promises of freedom. The truth is that many people do not want change. They want the appearance of change. They want diversity without equity, inclusion without accountability, progress without disruption. They want the language of justice without the reality of it. But truth is not cosmetic. It does not perform for applause. It does not care if it is welcome. It demands to be heard, and it grows louder every time someone tries to silence it. When you speak the truth boldly, you will be labeled extreme. But what is more extreme? Telling the truth about oppression or living under it every day? What is more radical? Naming injustice or accepting it as normal? The ones who are truly dangerous are not those who speak truth to power, but those who protect power from truth. They are the ones who write the rules, manipulate the data, rewrite history, and criminalize resistance. We must reject the idea that truth must be palatable to be valid. Some truths are painful. Some truths are shameful. Some truths expose the deepest cracks in our national identity, but they must be told, because the alternative is to continue living in denial, in delusion, in deceit. And a society that builds itself on lies cannot survive forever. It will collapse under the weight of its own contradictions. To speak the truth is to take a side. There is no neutrality in the face of injustice. You either speak out or you are complicit. You either challenge the system or you help uphold it. Truth-telling is not just about facts. It is about courage. It is about standing firm when the world tells you to sit down. It is about being hated for saying what others are too afraid to admit. And it is about refusing to apologize for refusing to lie. There is a deep fear in this country of truth unfiltered. because truth exposes what many do not want to see. It pulls back the curtain on a democracy that looks more like an oligarchy. It reveals that the land of the free is filled with cages, that the home of the brave is built on stolen bones, that the richest nation in the world cannot care for its poor. It shows that our myths are just that, myths, and that our moral high ground is nothing but a hill of hypocrisy. Truth has never been safe, but it has always been necessary. It does not wait for the right moment. It does not require permission. It does not seek approval. It demands to be spoken boldly, unapologetically, and without fear of who it offends. Because only when the truth is spoken can the lies be dismantled. Only when the truth is faced can justice begin.